In the mid-1700s, Britain controlled a vast empire. But on the eastern edge of North America, 13 colonies were about to spark one of the most influential revolutions in world history. This is the story of how ordinary colonists challenged one of the most powerful nations on Earth.
For decades, the colonies lived with salutary neglect. Britain didn't bother them much, as long as they traded British goods. But after the expensive 7 Years' War, Britain needed money. So Parliament introduced new taxes. The Stamp Act, everything on paper needed a paid stamp. The Townshend Acts, taxes on tea, glass, lead, and paint. The Tea Act, which gave one British company control over colonial tea. To the colonists, this wasn't just about money. It was about rights. They argued they were being taxed without representation in Parliament.
By 1770, frustration ignited. British troops fired into a crowd in Boston, killing 5 colonists, an event known as the Boston Massacre. Propaganda spread quickly. Pamphlets, newspapers, and speeches fueled anger. The breaking point came in 1773, when colonists disguised as Mohawk warriors boarded British ships and dumped more than 300 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. This became the famous Boston Tea Party.
Britain responded with harsh laws called the Intolerable Acts. But instead of scaring the colonies, they united them. On April 19, 1775, British soldiers marched to seize colonial weapons in Concord, Massachusetts. Local militias, known as Minutemen, stood in their way. A shot was fired. No one knows who pulled the trigger, but it ignited the first battles of the Revolution, Lexington and Concord. As war spread, colonial leaders met in Philadelphia. Among them was a young Virginian named Thomas Jefferson, who wrote a powerful document arguing that all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was adopted. The colonies were no longer colonies, they were the United States of America.
At first, the Americans struggled. They lacked supplies, weapons, and a formal army. But they had George Washington, whose leadership kept the revolution alive. A turning point came with the American victory at Saratoga, which convinced France to join the war against Britain. Suddenly, the world's greatest empire wasn't fighting 13 colonies. It was fighting global rivals. In 1781, American and French forces surrounded British General Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. After weeks of siege, he surrendered. When rumors reached the British Parliament, one member reportedly said, "It is all over." 2 years later, Britain officially acknowledged American independence.
The American Revolution didn't just create a new nation. It inspired movements around the world, France, Haiti, Latin America, showing that ordinary people could challenge tyranny. But the revolution also left contradictions. Freedom expanded for some, while enslaved people, indigenous nations, and women continued to face oppression. The fight for liberty would continue long after 1783.
The American Revolution was more than a war. It was an idea that people could choose their government, that power could come from the people, and that freedom is a constant struggle.